specific to the web application development, and I select ASP.NET Core Web Application. Click Next. Give the name for this project. We'll call this as DNC for .NET Core underscore demo CRUD using React, as we are going to create the backend and the front end both in the same project, just to avoid that cross origin resource sharing issue. Though we can have the client side, that is the front end, and the server side, that is the backend, developed in two different projects, but you just need to set the CORS policy for your backend web API. In that case, that's just the additional thing that you would be requiring if you are creating the two different projects for the client and the server. As of now, just to keep it simple, I'm going with the single project in which my API will be hosted and the front end also will be served from. Hence, the CORS policy will not be applicable. I select the location as my D drive demos folder and I click on create. Being a web application, I would be getting a secondary dialog wherein once again I have a choice of few templates. Just to have a quick understanding of these templates, the empty template gives me only a web application setup to start with just the configuration file by default coming in. And as far as the .NET Core is concerned, we do need to have some kind of hosting environment setup, and that's where the startup class also comes in along with your program class, providing the main, that is the actual entry point of your application. So that's the only thing you get with empty template. Then you have web application template, which actually creates the sample web application with some sample pages already being placed. Unlike .NET Framework here, we don't have ASPX web forms by default, though ASPX is supported here, but the default platform that is used to develop the server-side pages is Razor, and which is not a new thing because Razor has been there for a while since MVC 2.0 was released by Microsoft on ASP.NET Framework. So the same Razor Pages technology is used for creating the individual standalone pages, and based on that, the web application gets created as a sample here. Then we have another template named as Web Application Model View Controller. By name, it should be clear that it gives me the MVC pattern-based sample created with a couple of controllers by default coming in, and the associated views by default coming in, and that's what I get there. Though it doesn't matter which template I use over here, I can start with empty and I can put MVC stuff into it. I can start with web application with Razor Pages, but still I can set up my MVC stuff into it. And if I select web application MVC, I can still have the standalone Razor Pages placed into it. And this is all the same template to start with, just that the sample which gets created by default has got a specific implementation. Then we have API template, which gives me only web API stuff implemented, and we do get a sample web API automatically created over here named as weather forecast. So that's what we will be getting by default, but no front end as such created for this. And then we have some templates which are using the modern client-side web technologies, Angular framework based implementation and React.js library based implementation. So if I select Angular, Angular 8 based implementation is automatically put in for my front end. And the backend is by default going to be the web API, and that web API, same weather forecast web API, is automatically going to be used for sample. And based on that, the Angular based client implementation as a sample also gets created. Same is the case with React.js. When I select React.js, it is actually going to give me the client, the front end implementation based on React.js, and the backend being the web API, and that web API once again being the weather forecast web API. And exactly same thing with the last template, React.js and Redux, wherein apart from React.js implementation, the Redux features also are integrated within the sample. So these are the templates. Here we can see the target framework is .NET Core selected by default, and ASP.NET Core 3.1 is selected by default. If I'm looking to have a older version used over here for this project, I can make the selection accordingly and then select the template of my choice. So in our case, as our client side is going to be implemented using React.js, I'm selecting React.js template here, and let's click on create. Pretty fast. The project is created over here. I'll just close this welcome page and let's have a look at the project structure. As I said, here we have a weather forecast model class created, which has got four properties into it. The first one is date of type date time. Then the second one is temperature C, that is basically to show the temperature in Celsius. And then we have temperature Fahrenheit, that is to show the temperature in Fahrenheit. And for this, we have some calculation based on temperature in Celsius. And then we have summary to show what kind of weather it is. So this is the model class that is going to be used. And then we have a controller based on this model class. Unfortunately, they have not put the sample based on the database interaction. Just in memory data they are playing around. And that's where we have a read-only string array defined as static array over here named as summaries with different summary values that will be set according to what the temperature is. And we can see there is a class called as weather forecast controller, which is actually an API as it is denoted by API controller. And then we have the attribute based routing that sets up the route template that begins with the controller coming in as a template. And then we have the constructor that is taking in the dependency for the logger service and registering it over here locally. And then that can be used anywhere, wherever it is required. And then we have just a single operation over here, that is get, that returns an enumerable of weather forecast. And here goes the logic for randomly generating the weather forecast. Though this can be further connected to some weather forecast web service or something, or we may have the communication with some AI ML based algorithm that is actually generating the predictions, and then that data we might be returning programmatically via this API. So this is the sample web API that we have created over here. And then you can see we have a client app folder which contains our sample React implementation with the SRC folder containing the actual implementation, where the entry point of this application will be app.js, the JavaScript based implementation, where we have the class app extending a component, React component basically, and then having a render method, which is actually a overridden method from the component. And this is setting up what needs to be done to start with. And then this app gets combined with this index.js to set up the actual environment. And then ultimately somewhere it is making use of the HTML file index.html placed in public folder, which contains the static HTML part of the UI. And then most of the UI over here going to be dynamically generated by the JavaScript files. And then we have components folder, wherein we already have fetch data.js that is actually having some communication with the weather forecast API. And based on what that weather forecast API is going to return, we are consuming that stuff and ultimately binding it to the HTML UI with the help of this logic. So that's what we have here as the sample. And then there is one more component, that is counter, which is just using some JavaScript based logic to provide some sort of counter, hit counter directly on the view. I'm sorry. So that's the setup, and I'll just build this application to see the template created the right project for me. As first time build activity takes a little longer because it downloads lots of node modules behind scenes. So practically before creating this project, you need to make sure that your machine has got latest Node.js environment installed. You can go to nodejs.org website and you can download latest Node.js, and then you can upgrade the NPM version also, because this project template uses NPM behind scenes. If your node is not updated or latest, and if your NPM is also not latest, probably this project template is going to fail for you. So before you create the project, make sure you have the right versions of Node and NPM installed. And after that, you create this project and then straight away build the project to get all the NPM dependencies downloaded. So basically, the major dependency I would say is Bootstrap framework for the CSS part. Then you need to have the React library downloaded. So these are some of the major dependencies, and these dependencies may have their own dependencies further as well. So the Node package manager NPM is going to be used for downloading all such things for the client side. For server side, for .NET stuff, we can still make use of NuGet the NuGet packages or NuGet package manager. So it's still compiling. In fact, it has not even started compiling. It is first of all downloading the stuff. Precisely in this case, it is downloading the stuff using NPM. Here it confirms restoring dependencies using NPM. This may take several minutes. Let's wait till the completion of the build activity. So here it says build succeeded. That means all the NuGet package dependencies have been downloaded successfully. Now I just say Control F5, press Control F5 key combination on your keyboard and get your project executing. So this time it should not take longer as the dependencies have been already downloaded and the code compilation has already taken place. Just that your React stuff is going to be hosted on the React development server, and that's why it takes a little while to start the React development server and then get your contents served into the browser. So I'll show you where that React development server has been configured. Though it looks like we are running on IIS Express, here the IIS Express is just playing the role of a reverse proxy to React development server for handling the client-side requests, whereas IIS is still hosting your web API. So here the UI comes, the sample UI, where I am on the home page as of now. If I go to counter and click increment, each time I click increment, it is just increasing the hit counter. And if I click on fetch data, it is showing me the weather forecast as well. The good part of using the development server from React is if I now go and make some changes, if I do some additions, my code gets compiled automatically the moment I save the file, and the UI automatically gets refreshed into the browser within few seconds. So that saves the entire efforts that go in starting up the application right from the scratch. My application is always running and accommodating whatever the changes which are going to come in. So development server has been implemented only for that purpose. And here, once your development is completed, you can just host this website on any web server of your choice, because .NET Core is now open source and cross-platform implementation. So practically you can host this application on any platform as well. Now, for React stuff, what they have used behind scenes, basically to generate this folder structure of client app is the typical React command from the React CLI, that is create React app command. And with the help of which this project automatically has integrated the React implementation into it. And that behind scenes uses the NPM and Node and all that to set up the client environment. And then because now we are having the Visual Studio 2019 being used for developing this application, everything is integrated in one place. As one single project, we are able to manage it. So the server side and client side development both can be done pretty easily and pretty efficiently from one single ID over here. You don't need to work with two different IDs for this. Okay, so I'll just close all the files over here. This was anyways just the sample. And out of these files, whichever file I require later on, I'll open it. And now again, the first thing that we are looking for is not straightforward React implementation. We want to create a web API of our own that talks to a SQL Server database table and provides me the CRUD operations against it. So for that, I just go to Server Explorer window. If not open, we can take it from View menu. Here I have already created a database named as Company DB, and that has got a table called as departments already placed into it. So here is my Company DB database on that local DB instance that comes along with Visual Studio. I've created this. So I expand tables, and here I have the table departments. I just right click and select open table definition from the menu, wherein we can see the overall definition of this table. So here we go. We have department number as the first field of type integer, primary key, definition is there with it. Then we have dname and varchar 50, location and varchar 50, where dname is not null and location is nullable. And here goes the create table script as well. So with the help of which I've got this table created, and this table has got some sample data also already placed into it. So I right click and say show table data, and I can see some sample data already present over there. Okay, so now I want the web API to consume this data and provide me the CRUD operations against it, for which I'm going to use Entity Framework Core. And Entity Framework Core provides me the code first strategy based implementation to communicate with the database. So for that, the first thing I'm going to do is right click the project and solution explorer and say add new folder named as models. And in this models folder, I'm going to add my class named as department to represent the mapping of this application with my backend table departments. As you must be knowing, Entity Framework basically is an ORM tool, object relational mapping tool. And this is where this object is going to be mapped to my database table departments. I'm going to use a couple of namespaces over here. So import the namespaces by using the using statement. The first one is system.componentModel.data annotations. If you have worked with Entity Framework in the past, this should be easy for you to understand. The second namespace is system.componentModel.data annotations.schema. And then I put the attribute on the top of this class department as table for table mapping, and the name of the table that I've used in the database. I'll call this as departments, as the name of the table in database is departments. Then I create three properties quickly. First is in department number. Second is string dname. and third is string location, which all are having the same names as what we have for the columns in the database table departments, and hence explicit mapping is not required. By convention, it will just check the name and the data type. If both are matching, it will just map automatically. Though I want this field to be acting as a primary key at the application level as well, so I mark it as key. I'll mark this as required as well. Rename is string already corresponds to nvarchar, that is Unicode characters. But in the database, we have seen the length is limited to 50 characters. Hence, I put an attribute max length with value 50 going in. That puts a check automatically at the application level for this field dname that more than 50 characters will not be accepted. And same thing goes for location as well. Additionally, my dname is required in the database, so I put required attribute over here. It's not null. Save this. Let's close this file. And again, into the Solution Explorer, I right click on the project and say add new folder named as DAL for data access layer. You can put this class that I'm going to add into DAL folder into models folder also, but I usually prefer to keep models and the data access layer separate. So I create a folder named as DAL, and I right click that folder and select add class. I name this class as company DB context, as my database name is company DB. I call it as company DB context. Add. Now, before I proceed, there are a few things I need to do. First, I need to install Entity Framework Core into this project. .NET Core has got a strategy that whatever functionality you need, though it's available as the part of the framework, but doesn't get included as a part of the project by default. To keep the overall footprint of the application as smaller as it is possible, they have adopted this strategy. So here, if I'm looking to use the entity framework feature, I have to install it as a NuGet package. So couple of ways. I can use package manager console, or I can use NuGet package manager UI to get the package installed. It all depends on which particular option is comfortable with you. You can go for it. I'm more comfortable with the PowerShell console represented by package manager console, and hence I'm going for package manager console. With the command install package and the name of the package, I'll get the entity framework core. You get package installed in my project. So here I go for giving the name of that package, which is Microsoft.entity framework core, and press enter key. So this will automatically get this entity framework core installed. Instead, in fact, I'll go for entity framework core.sql server. So I uninstall this package and directly install entity framework core.sql server, because ultimately I'm going to talk to the SQL server provider as my backend is SQL server. Should be installed. So So this will automatically install Entity Framework Core package as well, as SQL Server depends on that. Okay, and then here I import the namespace Microsoft.Entity Framework Core, and then I make this class inherit from the base class named as dbContext. This is my DAL class, going to provide all the CRUD operations for me. The first thing which I do here is I create a property of type dbSet, which represents the collection of type department. That means the collection of type department is going to be created. So the moment I complete that selection, automatically it has imported the namespace for me for models, and I name the property now as departments. This is the collection wherein I'm going to provide all the CRUD operations, create, retrieve, update, delete, everything. And then just couple of constructors I need to create for this class. Everything else is automatically provided by my base class. So it already has got the implementation for generating queries and getting them executed at the right times. So here goes my default constructor that changed to the base class default constructor. And then the second constructor with a parameter of type dbContext options I'll create here. Let's say the parameter is named as options, and this also changed to the base class constructor, wherein it just passes on options to the base class. Say your DAL class is ready. So practically no code required, absolutely no code required as such. Just the basic setup of the entity classes you have created and a simple dbContext class created over here, representing the collection of your data that you are going to deal with, and couple of constructors where constructors are also empty, as the actual job is going to be taken care of by your base class. So you just need to provide a chain created to the base class constructor there. Save this and let's get this file also closed. The next job comes in as where I need to provide the connectivity details, precisely the connection string. So I just go to app settings.json file. Here, after the last key value pair, I put a comma and create a new section over here with the key name as connection strings. Then the value as another JSON object. So I put curly brace pair, and as there could be more than one connection strings, actually this is going to be an object. So here I have my connection string key. Let's call it as CS, and then the actual connection string. So I say server equals to typical SQL Server connection string I'm going to put. So I'm using an instance that is named as localDB / MS SQL localDB. My database we have seen is named as company DB. Database equals to, not colon. And finally, I'll say integrated security equals to true, as I'm going to use Windows authentication or Windows integrated authentication. Let's save this file and close it. And then open your startup.cs file, wherein first of all, I'm going to import a couple of namespaces, starting with Microsoft.Entity Framework Core, followed by the namespace that represents my DAL class. So it will be DNC demo CRUD using React, that is the project name .dal. and then move into the configure services method, where just before this add controllers with view statement, I use this services object, which is of type iService collection. As IOC container, this object basically provides the service, and I can register all of my dependencies into this, which will be available throughout for resolution across the entire application. And whenever required, you can just resolve your dependencies from there. So either property-based dependency injection or constructor-based dependency injection, whichever suits you, you can use that. Method-based dependency injection also is possible. Okay, so I'm going to register my company DB context class over here as a dependency. So whenever it is required, it will automatically be resolved. I just say services dot add DB context extension method, and here I say my DB context is represented by company DB context class. This takes in a parameter which is of type action, that is a delegate, which depends on a parameter of type DB context options builder. I use lambda expression over here, so I just assume there is a parameter named as options, which will be automatically inferred as DB context options builder type. And here I say options goes into, in fact, curly brace is not required. Single line statement I'm going to use. So I can directly say options dot use SQL Server. It is asking for the connection string now. So here the connection string is now there in app settings.json file from where I want to retrieve it. I'll use this property configuration to do the same. So I just put configuration property dot get connection string method available there. To which I need to pass the name, which is actually the key that I've provided to the connection string, which was CS. So this will retrieve the connection string and will set up a SQL Server based backend for working with this company DB context class. Once this is done, I first of all build the project by saying Control Shift B, or maybe build menu, build solution, or F6 key also is there. Anyhow, you have to build the project to see all well. Succeeded. So all looks good. Meanwhile, you can also see there are few specific things about the React development environment. So here we already have another dependency being added, add spa static files, configuration goes in configuration.root path. So by default, the path has been set up where the build files will be created, and so and then from the middleware infrastructure, we have included use spa, and I mean the spa middleware, wherein we are saying the source path for the source code files is client app, and then for development environment, we are going to use the React development server with npm script option by default going in as start. So npm start command will automatically be issued whenever this project basically is started. Right, so that's where the npm development server or React development server is already working behind scenes. Now I need to generate my API controller. So I go to Solution Explorer, select controllers folder, right click and say add controller. Wherein I'm going to select the last template, API controller with actions using entity framework, and click on add. Model class I need to choose as department. Data context class is company DB context. And I'm going to have a small change over here. Controller name, I want it to be department's API controller rather than department's controller. This is my choice because this gives me a better idea that this controller is not a typical MVC controller, but represents an API controller. Click on add. And there the API controller gets ready. I have my API. Route is by default defined as API slash the route template for controller. API controller making this web API. Company DB context object defined into the class level, and via constructor based dependency injection, we are resolving it to the concrete instance. So this was automatically going to resolve from that iService collection object. And then we have the various API methods, get departments that returns me the complete collection of department objects based on how many records I have in the backend table. Then I have get department, which takes in a parameter of type int that is named as ID. And based on the ID pass here, we are searching for a specific department. That ID may not be existing into the database table. So we are checking if this department object is null. Return HTTP status code 404, for which we are using this helper method not found. And then if found, in that case, we are returning the actual department. Then comes put department that takes in the original ID that is being edited, and then the edited department object. And as per the modern requirements, where the primary key values are not allowed to be changed once created, we have put a check here. If ID and the incoming department number from this object is not matching, return bad request status code 400, so that client understands that, okay, there is something wrong. If not, if it is matching, in that case, set the state of the incoming department as modified into the DB context collection, and then save changes will fire the update query. In this case, there could be two concurrency issues. One is if someone has already deleted that record before me going and modifying it, uh, there will be concurrency exception. So in that case, we are just returning not found. And if, the second case could be some other user might have already modified that value. Hence, the concurrency exception comes to me. So in that case, I'm just rethrowing the exception, showing the information to user that, okay, this object has been already modified. If you still want to modify, you have to re-download that object, and then if required, you modify and submit again. So that's what it is. We are just rethrowing the exception, and this put operation doesn't generate any new thing. So we don't return anything from it. Hence, we say return no content. Then goes the post department option, wherein we are taking in the department object, and we are adding it to the collection. Save changes will fire the insert query by default and get that record created. And here we are returning something, basically the object which uh, shows me the details about where this object is created. So created at action is what is used. So it by default routes to get department with ID and returns that department. Then comes the delete department option, which takes in ID, that is department number, finds that department number. If not found, return not found. Else, go ahead and remove it from the collection, and then save changes will fire delete query against the database to get it actually removed from the database, and return the department object that is deleted for showing the user that this is the record you have deleted. In case if they want to restore, they can restore it from there. And this is the helper method departments exist, which is being used in here, where we are looking for that if that department is deleted, return not found for concurrency operation. So this is our API. A simple test I can do by just using the key combination control F5, launching the application once again in the browser, though it was already there. I just close this browser tab. There's the backend server stuff I wanted to compile, and I'm back over here. So right now I don't have any link or any UI created to consume that department's API. Hence, I directly go to the address bar. I can see the base address there, where I put a slash API slash departments API and press enter. So this should show me all the existing data about the departments, which it is showing. And then if I say, show me the department number 2, it's showing me. I say, show me department number 2000. It says it's not found. So not found option is coming in with status code 404. So the API seems to be working, but I'm not able to test the post, put, and delete operations over here. For that, we can use the third-party tools like Postman or Fiddler or Firebug, whichever tool you are comfortable with. But then that has a dependency that that tool has to be installed on your machine. If not, then what? And typically, if you are the service provider where you are just into creating the services and hosting them, your client partners may be creating the client applications which consume these web APIs. In that case, probably we need some integrated environment here as a part of the API solution itself, which allows me to see what all APIs I have in this project and a playground for that where I can go and test those APIs as well functionally. So I keep this browser as it is, just minimize that. And here now what I'm looking for is the open API specification to be created for my clients, which will form the basis for the playground created for the APIs where user can come and see what APIs are there and test those APIs as per their requirement. So for that, the first thing we are supposed to do is install some package that allows me to generate that open API specification documentation for my API. Just like for web services, we used to have WSDL documentation. These days for RESTful APIs, we prefer open API documentation as that is based on JSON and compatible with all platforms, all technologies. Make sense? So for that, we will be using a package named as Swashbuckle, and that is going to make use of the framework called as Swagger that will create open API spec documentation for me. So let's go to package manager console. I'll just clear the screen by using CLS command. And here I say install package Swashbuckle dot ASP.NET Core and press enter. So this gets the package installed with all of its dependency packages as well. And then the next thing is I need to import the namespace. Swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core.Swagger. And then I move into configure services. I'm sorry, this needs to be done not in the API, but in the startup class. So I cut it from the API. I move to startup class. And here I put that using statement. And then I move to configure services method, wherein just after this add controller with views, I'll put services dot add swagger gen. This is going to be a dependency registered that contains the code for how to generate that open API specification documentation. But it will not be used automatically, as within the code we have not called it anywhere explicitly. For that, we need to configure a middleware component, which in turn will make use of the dependencies registered over here by add swagger gen. So let's move on to configure method. And just before use routing, I'll say app.use swagger. This will automatically use the dependency that we have added by add swagger gen method and will make sure the open API specification documentation gets generated for my APIs in this project. So I once again save and press Ctrl F5 key combination. as this is again a server side change. I wanted this project to be compiled once again. I just close this tab and go to the root of this website. And here I put Swagger after the port number slash. And in a short while, I should be able to see, okay. Because of that React stuff, I'm not able to see that JSON documentation, but it is actually there. Maybe we can change the sequence a bit and we can still see the same. I'll just keep this as it is, and this I will probably put before use static files. Save. In fact, after static files, but before sparse static files. Save and refresh. I should have compiled this as well in the backend. So maybe here I go and say Control Shift B to get it built. Oh, looks like the server has suffered some issues. So I'll just say Control F5 from here again. Close this tab, stop this, and press enter again. Okay, let me move this little more earlier. So probably as the first statement, I'll put it here. Sometimes the timing matters over here, hence we need to do this. Again, I'll say Control F5. Close the tab, stop, and press enter. Not so. One last try I'm going to make over here. I'll move this, use Swagger statement after this. If Control F5. The React routing is basically the culprit over here, so I need to override that. Okay, let's close this tab and press enter here. Okay. Let's move this also before add controllers. So this should not make much difference here. Refresh. Okay. So the last thing is, for the time being, I'm going to comment this section along with this section. If Control F5, close this tab and press enter. Oh yeah, so this one statement also was supposed to be commented, as the dependency is not available anymore. I close this and press. Okay, we do have some issue. No worries. The documentation is going to be generated. We will see it later on. So I just restore everything. To generate, I mean, this use Swagger will just get the plain JSON documentation created for me. Plain text, plain JSON. With the help of certain tools within the Swagger framework, we can generate a nice UI also to work with, which I called as a playground. So for that, we need to say app.use Swagger UI. That helps me generate the UI created for the Swagger documentation, and that makes it easy for the user to understand what all the things going on. So here we go and say, so I'll put before the routing stuff somewhere here. Oops. It should be just these two lines put here. And this Swagger UI takes in the action delegate as the parameter, which is based on Swagger UI options. So I can use Lambda expressions once again. I say options goes in options dot Swagger endpoint, wherein I need to give the path where that documentation gets available. So I say slash Swagger slash v1 slash swagger.json. I need to give a version also to this. So I'll say v1. And Control F5. Let the home page be loaded. Here I will put slash Swagger once again, and I get the Swagger UI create. That itself means that Swagger JSON is also available. And here I can actually go and try out all the methods. Just click try out, say execute. As the first method doesn't have any parameter, I see all the data coming in. I collapse this, I try this get, try it out. I put 2 here, execute. This gives me the department number 2 data, and I want to post, means create a new record. So here I say the D name, the new one is, let's say, marketing, with location as Mumbai. Execute. Got created here with this department ID. Just copy this department ID. Again, click on post to collapse it. Click on get again. Here we already have the ID stuff available, where I put in I1017. Execute. It shows me that the record has been created. Collapse this. I want to edit this record. So here I say put, try it out, 1017. The value was marketing, and the update I want is in location, which initially is Mumbai. I want to make it to Pune. I click on execute. Must have been done. Oh yeah, I need to put the department number as 1017, as what is going in from here and what is going in from here must be same. So completed, which I can verify by once again going back to this get and click execute. It shows me the location has been updated to Pune. And then I want to delete this record. So I just say try it out, put the parameter value as 1017, execute, and this record gets deleted. So if I now go back to get here and say execute, it should show me not found, which it is showing. So the API is operational. Yeah, in fact, I was making a mistake. The path which I was putting was incomplete. It should have been swagger/v1/swagger.json. It's visible here. I click on that and I can see the plain JSON documentation as OpenAPI specification as well. The version of OpenAPI spec being used is 3.0.1. Okay, so that ends our part one, where we have successfully created a web API based on entity framework core to provide CRUD operations. And then we have provided the open API specification with the help of Swagger framework. And we have successfully generated the Swagger UI also with the help of Swagger UI middleware. So that's the first part. I'll need the base URL of this website somewhere. So I'll just get this much copied into my notepad window. Maybe somewhere here. And then let's start with the second part of this session. I keep my browser up and running like this and switch to Visual Studio. We can close these files. And now it is all about React operations. So what I'm going to need is something similar to what we already have in sample. Our sample contains a component called as fetch data, which is communicating with the backend service and weather forecast service and providing me the UI, which we can see once again. If I click on fetch data, this is what I'm getting. Something similar I want in case of department API as well. So the page should show me the table containing all the data from department table, should show me the create new option, should show me edit option and delete option respectively. Okay, so let's start. Let's go back to Visual Studio. And here, let's close this file. The first thing I'm going to do is create a React component. So right click component folder and say add new item. On the left hand side, select ASP.NET Core, web, scripts, and there you get JavaScript file. I name this as fetch departments. JS extension it will automatically take as we selected the template as JavaScript file. So here we have fetch departments.js. So how it starts? First of all, I need to import some components from base classes from the existing library. So I use import statement, which is equivalent to using in C#. So what to import, I'll put later on. I just put some gap for that. I first complete from, the source needs to be given here. I say the source is React library. And what I need to import is I mention over here. So I want the class React. I'm looking to import. This is going to represent the kind of namespace. All name classes from this library will be represented by React dot whatever the class name is. And then a specific class also I want to be individually imported, that is named as component. Then I say import something from React router DOM. Good part is we have full intelligence available. And what I want to import from here is a class named as link to provide the hyperlinks or maybe some links based on some React routes. Then I create the actual component as class fetch departments that inherits from component class. So in JavaScript, we use keyword extends for the same. And this class needs to be available throughout this project, throughout all the JavaScript files. Hence, I need to mark it as exported class. Otherwise, this class will be limited to be used within this file only, which I don't want. Define a static member over here. Named as display name. I'll call this as departments. Then I create a constructor for this class. Remember, this is JavaScript syntax, so there could be slight differences compared to C#, but conceptually you can relate. I want to chain this constructor with the base class constructor that sets up the props for me. So say super props. And then I want to set the state of the current object that is represented by this JSON object that has got the first property named as departments, which is going to be an JavaScript array. And then there is another property named as loading, which I'm going to set as true to start with, because just after this, I'm going to make a call to my backend web API service. And that's where the loading mode needs to be set to true. Here goes a method named as component did mount, which is actually the overridden method from component class. This class already has got this method. So just overriding that. This automatically gets invoked whenever the component loading is completely finished. After that, it starts executing. So here I give the call to a helper method named as populate departments data. I said helper method, it's not yet created. We are yet to create this, but just going with use first strategy, right? So just put a call to populate departments data. I copy this name. I need to create this method practically. So here I say, here goes the method. I want this method to be created as async, asynchronous method. So I say async populate departments data. Doesn't take in any parameter, but has got some code within it, where I say there is a constant defined named as response to collect any response coming from the backend service, where I say await. This is a JavaScript method based on the XML HTTP request. I need to pass in the path of my API because I am in the same website. I actually don't need the base URL. I just need to pass in the relative path of the API. If it is on a separate domain, separate application, in that case, you have to give the fully qualified path. This is my path. Then I say there is another constant named as data, where I'm saying await response dot JSON. So whatever response that is coming in, take it as a JSON object and assign to data. And then with the help of this response, I'll say this dot set state departments. That's the first parameter we have defined here. To data, which is actually going to be a JSON array, JavaScript array, comma, loading and false, because loading has been finished. I should have wrapped this in curly braces because I'm representing JSON object to be used for setting up the state. Okay. Next, there is another method which is already coded inside your base class component and internally called. So I need to override that. The name of the method is render, which does all the UI generation stuff for me. So I say render. Here I define a variable named as contents by using let contents statement equal to this dot state dot loading. You know, this loading is basically a Boolean value. So what I'm going to do is using ternary operator, I'm going to check if it is true, show something. If it is false, show something else. So I say this dot state dot loading. Here goes question mark, the ternary operator. So if true, what I want to show is a paragraph. So I have paragraph slash paragraph. In that, I want emphasized text to be displayed. So I have m slash m and the actual text going in here. So if the state dot loading property is true, I just want to display the text loading. That comes after colon. What I want to do is call another helper method here. Let's say named as render departments table. This helper method, again, I'm going to create manually, will be responsible for generating the table view for displaying departments data. And here I pass the payload, that is the data that is received from the fetch statement. So this dot state dot departments contains that value, and I just send it. Now this is just a variable which will hold this UI generated into it. To actually integrate within the page, I'll go for a return statement. The method actually here. So I say return within parentheses. There is some more UI code that is going to be prepended or appended to whatever is going to be generated from here. So basically this stuff is going to be injected inside this. So here I say div, which has got h1 element. So I have slash h1. Here I have an attribute for this h1, id equals to table level. Should be put in double quotes. And the heading is departments. There is a paragraph. So again, p slash p, where I have the text as, this is just for our understanding. This component fetches departments data from the server. Then I have another paragraph. So p slash p. This paragraph has got a link. A link basically will be created by this to a route defined as the base address of the website followed by slash add department. Route is not yet defined. We'll be defining it shortly once this component is created. And here I have the title as create new department. And after this paragraph, I want to inject the value of this contents variable. So here I say curly braces, that is handlebars and contents. So that's my render method ready. Here again, we have a requirement of creating another helper method, render departments table. So I just copy this name, and just after this render method being finished, I say there is a method render departments table that takes in a parameter named as departments. And here goes the body for the same. A little bit of HTML stuff will come in here. I just say return. And all HTML going in here. So I say there is table, hash table, some attributes for this Bootstrap class I want to apply on this to make it look nice. I say class name equals to table striped, and then for backward compatibility for older browsers, I'll also say aria labeled by equals to the header that we have here, table label. And then we have thead for header row slash thead. Here goes table header. So th. First one I'm going to keep empty. So I just say th slash th. Copy this 3 more times. Four more times. The first and last are going to be empty, but here the second one is, oops, it should be department number. I put hash. That's the heading of first column, heading of second column, heading of third column. So the header is ready. And then just after slash t head, I have t body, that is table body, and slash t body, where I should have some logic that generates different rows for different records. And for that, I'll use the departments object that gives me a method called as map. This is going to work just like for each in C#. And there goes the call for the map. Multi-line to make it more readable. And here I say this map takes in department that goes in. So it's just like for each department in departments. What I want is a row to be created. So I say slash tr. This is going to be used as a template for each of the row. I want each row to have the key value of that particular object maintained. So I say tr key is equals to within handlebars department dot department number. Should be with small d. And then the actual UI generation goes here. So first column I'm going to keep empty, and so I just have td/td. I'll copy this 4 more times. Second one is supposed to display me the value of department number. Once again, handlebar department number goes in here. This should display me dname. So handlebars, within that department dot dname. And then third one, handlebar department dot location. And this one is going to hold the edit and delete buttons within it. I'm so sorry. So here goes my first button. I'm going to associate a default Bootstrap class with btn success. More details on Bootstrap, you can just look at the Bootstrap documentation. On click of this button, I want an event handler to be associated here. So I say that is represented by an object which takes in the first parameter ID. It goes in fact, it's a lambda function that I'm using. This dot handle edit. Again, helper method that we have not yet created, we'll create soon. This takes in a parameter department dot department number. Is the angle bracket here, that is end of the tag. So here I need to say slash button, after which I want a non-breaking space. So here I put ampersand NBSP semicolon, and the title of button is yet to be given. So I'll name this as edit. Just copy and paste on the second line. NBSP at the second line is not needed. It all starts the same way. Button class name btn. This time I'll say it is danger. That makes it have the background as red. On click, that also takes an ID. This parenthesis should have been closed here. So I'll put it here this way. This becomes extra here. So I just make necessary changes. All the corrections going in. And here I say, just like handle edit, I have another helper method that is handle delete, which also takes in department number and then goes the title as delete. So that is my complete UI stuff. Now just two things are pending: the creation of handle edit and handle delete methods. So I start with handle edit first. So I copy this handle edit. Make sure all the implementation going at the class level. Handle edit, that takes an ID, that practically is department number in fact, where I say this dot props dot history dot push. History entry I'm creating, so this is actually just like response dot redirect on the client side. Here I say I want to redirect to a route departments slash edit slash plus ID. This route handling we have not yet set up. We'll see that shortly after this. Same way I'll create handle delete, which also takes an ID. Where I use an if statement wherein the parameter is window.confirm. that pop-up, default pop-up, which is provided by JavaScript, confirm pop-up box, which asks a question to the user to take input. So that question goes over here as, do you want to delete department with department number got a value as ID? If yes, because I put not, so if no, I just want to ignore and return else. What I want is send the delete request to the web API to get this record deleted. So once again, the fetch object is going to help us, fetch method. So I'll say fetch API slash departments API slash delete is taking in a route parameter ID. So I'll pass plus ID, comma. The default method is post always. Hence I override method with delete. And then I use the promise framework of JavaScript. Promise says that no matter whether the request fails or succeeds, you will always get a response. That response might be the data, or that response might be the detail about the error. But the guarantee is you get the response. Then I say data. If error, this data will be error object. If all well, this data will be the real object. Data goes in. Again, lambda expression I'm using here, where I say this dot set state to a JSON object, where I say departments colon this dot date dot departments dot filter. On the client side, I just need to filter out the record which we have deleted. Here we say the parameter rec that represents one department that goes in return rec dot department number not equal to ID. So whatever the ID that we have, except that all the department data needs to be displayed. So our component is completed over here. We'll just save this. Now we need to integrate with this existing menu that we have over here to get to that component, first of all. And for that, we already have a file here named as navmenu.js. If you scroll down a bit here, you have some nav links created, nav items created with the help of nav links. So the last one I'm copying, the nav item I'm copying and paste here. Just do the alignment a bit and then make some changes. Nav link tag equals to link class name text doc. To instead of fetch data, I want it to be connected to fetch departments. And here I say this is fetch departments as the title. I save this and go back to the browser. In a short while, this page should refresh as I've made some changes in React stuff. I should be able to see fetch departments here, which I am. And if I hover on it, just see that bottom left corner wherein the route is getting displayed, the base URL / fetch departments. But right now, if I click on this, nothing will happen because this route is not having a route handler. which I need to now set up, which maps to the fetch department component. So for that, I have to use the other file, that is app.js, wherein all the routers are getting set. So probably I just copy this last route, do the basic alignment settings here. Default template is using just 2 spaces, whereas the regular tab uses 4 spaces. That's why the alignment is getting destroyed. So the route that we are looking to map is departments. And the component, first of all, we need to import over here. So I'll say import empty curly braces from /, the name of our component. So that is there in components folder, in fact, / fetch departments. And the name of that class I need to give here, that is fetch departments. So what changes here is this route is connected to this component, fetch departments. Save. And this save should automatically be able to refresh my page here. I didn't do anything. It is automatically getting refreshed. And now if I click on fetch departments, have a look at this. We have a nice table displaying all the data that exists into the departments table, displayed in this nice Bootstrap formatted table. I have the edit delete buttons. I have create new department also, but this create new department won't do anything. Edit won't do anything. Delete probably is going to work for me, which we will test later on. Edit and create we have not handled yet. So let's go back to Visual Studio. For edit and create, we are going to use another component named as add department, and which will handle edit and add both operations. So let's go to Solution Explorer here in Visual Studio and create a new JavaScript file under client app src components by the name add department.js. So here we go. Components, right click, add, new item, ASP.NET Core, web, scripts, JavaScript file. I'll name this as add department.js automatically taken. And there we have the empty JavaScript file. This also starts the same way how we started the earlier one. So import from React. What we want to import is all classes denoted by React, comma, one specific class named as component. Here I am going to create a model class for the client side. I say there is a class department where I have a constructor. Oh yeah, I missed this. Constructor that sets up all the data members. So I say this dot department number, default value 0. This dot rename, default value empty string. This dot location plus default value empty string again. And that's my model class. Very much similar to the model class that we created at the server side for the API. Then I have my real component here. Export class add department that extends component. Here we have constructor that takes in props, passes it to the base class, just like what we have done in previous component. Then we set the state. Few similar things we are going to see again. The state is represented by a JSON object, which has got the first field as title, that is empty to start with. It should be colon used over here. It's a JSON object, comma, department is the next, which is set to new instance of department class that we have created on the top, comma, loading colon true. As now after this statement, I'm going to make a fetch statement. I call a helper method over here, this dot initialize. I have to create this method. We'll do that shortly. Then we go for binding the event handlers. I'm looking to have two events handled here. First one is handle save when the save button is clicked. So I say this dot handle save equals to this dot handle save, that is going to be the method itself. We are going to create another helper method by this name handle save dot bind this. This binding is required so that the execution context gets available to the event handler represented by this method. The event and everything we can be able to access. Same way, I want another event handle cancel to be configured. So handle cancel equals this dot handle cancel dot bind this, and one by one now we need to create these helper methods. So first I go with initialize method. Here goes our initialize method. I want to make it async. So it's async initialize. Here goes the method body, where I define a variable named as department number that is equal to this dot props dot history. Props dot match dot params department number. Looking for if the route basically contains a route parameter department number or not. If yes, department number will have a value. If not, it may have null or something. Right. So here I put a check. If department number is greater than 0, that means the request is for edit operation. If non-zero, in that case, it is for insert operation. Maybe we can put it other way around. We can say less than equal to 0. That means the request is for here less than equal to 0. So request is for insert operation, where I say this dot state equals to the JSON object where the first key is title. As the request is for create, I want the form's title to be put as create, and department object is new instance of department class with loading property being set to false. Yes. The request seems to be for edit operation. If it is a number more than or higher than 0. In that case, what I do is const response that catches the response from the fetch statement. So await fetch. What from where we want to fetch the same API slash departments API slash plus department number as for edit operation. First of all, we want to show the existing data. So we want this API to fetch that department with that given department number. And that's the fetch statement. The next statement captures the data from the response. So I say data equals to await response.json. Just like what we did in the previous component also. The only difference being there we got the array, here we are going to get a single object. And I say this dot set state to the JSON object, where the first property being set is title. In this case, it's an edit request. So I say edit department colon data, retrieve data, and loading equals to false, colon false. Okay. So before we go for handle save and handle cancel, we need to handle the render operation as well, which creates the UI. So, there is a render method that needs to be overridden. So we say render. Somewhat similar stuff we are going to do here, what we did in previous component. So maybe what I can do is I can just go back here and copy some stuff, or maybe we just code it. It will be easier to understand. So let contents equals to this dot state dot loading. Once again, I want to check what is the value in loading. And using ternary operator, I conditionally generate the UI. Here I have paragraph slash paragraph, within which I have emphasize tag with slash emphasize, and the text is loading dot 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 else. This dot render another helper method. So once again, 3 methods are pending from our side: handle save, handle cancel, and render create from. That's okay. We will do that. We have a return statement here that generates the actual UI. What I want to return is div slash div with h1 element slash h1. The text in between is the title of the form. So this dot state dot title. Next, I have h3 heading, which shows me what type of form it is. So let's say it is departments. Just department because single record I'm handling. I want to create a separator, so horizontal rule, oops, should be here. Touch is very sensitive on my laptop, so that is creating issues. No problem, I'll be more careful. So here I then say the value of the contents variable needs to be injected. So that is our render method. Now we'll first code for handle save, followed by handle cancel, and then finally render create form. So here we go and put handle save that takes in an object named as event, as it's an event handler. I say event dot prevent default because many times the buttons play the role of submit button, which I don't want at all. My own local code I want to execute instead of submitting to the server directly by the button. So I say event dot prevent default, then starts the real operation where I say const data equals to new form data event dot target. So that will automatically collect all the information from the form and put it into the object data. Then I go for if statement where I say this dot state dot department dot department number. So what this means is it is greater than 0. It's an edit request. So I say var response 1 equals to fetch what from where I want to fetch. It is API slash departments API slash, it's an edit request, so slash plus this dot state dot department dot department number, comma, need to set the method to put comma data also I want to pass, so I say body colon data. So that is my response 1. And then once it is completed, I'll say this dot props. I want to redirect back to the home view, which shows me the table information. So this dot props dot history dot push, again something like response dot redirect. Where I want to go back is the route slash fetch departments. So my view will automatically be changed. So that's my handle save part 1 in case if the request was for edit, but I need to put code for handling the request for insert operation as well. So here I say var response to is equals to, copy this part, paste it here. In case of post, there is no route parameter, so I just get this removed, slash and then plus this dot department dot whatever it is. Then method is going to be post, body is going to be data, and once again I need to redirect to my fetch departments route. So here we go. So that is handle save. Next is handle cancel that I want to implement. I copy this name and come back here and create the next member method handle cancel, which also takes an event. And what I want here is, again, the first thing will be this default behavior I want to ignore. And I want to put my own stuff there. I just say this dot. In fact, it's the same redirection statement. If I change my mind, I just need to redirect back. So I copy this and paste it here. So that's my handle cancel. And then the last thing which is pending is one of the helper method that we have called in render, that is render create form. The actual UI stuff is going to be created by this. So render create form has got a return statement within which what I have is the form element with slash form, some attributes I want to set for this form. Before we proceed, here I'll say form on submit. I want to bind it to my this dot handle save method. Okay, and then some UI stuff. UI stuff I'm just going to paste it over here. I have some pre-created code just to save time, because that's more of HTML, and the kind of HTML I've used you might have seen lot many times in standard MVC applications on .NET Framework. Bootstrap based UI I have created here. Input type hidden to hold the value of department number, because anyways it is auto generated. I mean identity column. I don't want it to be inputted explicitly, but for edit operation I need to submit the value. So I have a hidden field which holds that value and that I'm submitting. Then I have input type text, dname, default value, that is for showing the existing data. Required attribute I've put over here. Location is not required to have required. So this is location stuff. And then I have another div section where I have a couple of buttons, button for submit, button for cancel. So here I have cancel. So save button, and then the handle cancel event being linked to on click. For button, I have not save button. I have not put this on click because it is already going to be taken care of by on submit, and because the button type is submit, form submit event automatically be coming into picture. So all handling there in place. To make all these things work, once again we need to do some changes into our app.js. Nav menu is not required because it's a single page application. We already have UI here. Edit, delete, create new. All links are there. We don't need separate links here in the main menu. But we need to map the routes from here and here and here to somewhere. So we need to go back to app.js and then create a couple of routes there. Before that, we need to import the newly created component. So I say from /components /add department, and the class I am looking to import here is add department, and then I need to create the routes. So I copy the last route and paste it twice and make changes. So here in both cases, the component is going to be add department. Same here. As you know, edit and create operation is going to be handled by the same component. We've coded it that way, and the route is different here. So it is add department here, and here it is departments /edit /: department number. ID parameter will be, the value will be passed here for department number, and that's it. And one last thing that we need to do is, as you can see from this, we are actually sending the form data as the request body, not the JSON data. So a small change required in our web API. So here I just go back to controllers and open departments API, locate, put department method here. Just before department, I put from form attribute, and the same thing I do for post as well. Form, otherwise it looks into form body. from body is the default. So just save and just say Control F5 because some changes into the web API. I want that also to be accommodated. Build activity has to be triggered and backend server also gets launched. This UI is already running. Just do a refresh from my side in case if it has not refreshed on its own. And it's there. So I say create new department. UI comes up, it's empty. The marketing is the department, location is Mumbai. I click on save. Just do a refresh here. Okay, there seems to be some mapping issue. I'll debug it out. Once again, I'll say create. Just refresh the page here. It's showing some JavaScript error. Just click on errors. Some typo mistake must be there, 100%. It says add department component missing parenthesis invoking a constructor. Okay, let's have a look into add departments, starting with this. This is okay. Constructor props, super props. This looks good. Let's see if some line number is also there. Line 15. This is all good.
Saket, could it be
Yes.
that the ID is not auto-generated or something like that?
It is auto-generated. It is identity column in my database.
Okay.
So it's a JavaScript error anyways. It has nothing to do with the backend actually.
Okay.
This could be a possible reason. Let's see. Okay, I'll just put it. Marketing, Mumbai, save. Yeah, so post request is showing some bad request error. Let's find out what's wrong. Okay, let me put it other way around. Yeah, so this condition possibly is the culprit. No issue. I'll just reverse it again the way how I was planning it originally. So greater than 0, hence this statement will move to else part and these three statements will move to if. Hopefully this solves the issue. I just save and I see the component refreshing over here automatically. Let's try marketing, Mumbai, save. Post error has not come this time. Just refresh once again. Yeah, it's added. Somehow it didn't load automatically, but yeah, it's added. So things are working out. And then I click on edit. It's already pre-filled. I want to change the location, Pune. Save and refresh once again. It should automatically work. I just need to debug what's going wrong. Some JavaScript issue might be preventing the reload. But yeah, code-wise, our implementation is all well. It could be browser issue as well. It's working. That itself says that our code is good. Let's click on delete over here. It says, it comes up with the confirmation. Do you want to really delete department with this department number? I say, okay, and it gets deleted. Here, the refresh is working properly. So even if I do a refresh over here, this should be working as well, right? It doesn't show up that data. So is it clear to all? We are almost done. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes, I'm waiting for the questions. So what we have learned today is how do we create the web API using ASP.NET MVC Core 3.1 framework with the help of Entity Framework Core. How do we create open API documentation for the API by using open source tools like Swashbuckle, Swagger. Possibly you can use some other framework also as far as Swagger is supported by it. Then how do we test the API into the browser using that Swagger UI? And ultimately, how do we consume that web API using React.js library and provide the communication with the backend service? Okay, so just placing the link to the feedback of the session in the chat box. Hardly it will take 1 minute. Please do fill the feedback form. That helps us to improvise on our session deliveries. And in that, you can put your details about any other session that you are looking for in terms of attending. Anyways, we are going to plan multiple such sessions on different topics, 2 to 3 hour sessions. If you are interested, you can put in your requirements into that feedback form. So accordingly, we can line up our upcoming events. Please do fill the feedback. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, I'm still there for next 10 minutes. You can go ahead with the questions. You can unmute yourself and ask the questions.
Saket, I have dropped an email asking for the recorded session so that when we want to do the practice exercise,
yeah, that anyways will be shared with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you have the requirement for any further sessions on any other topic, you can put that also in the mail.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions right now.
Yeah, so just do fill the feedback.
Sure.
I hope everyone is able to access the link.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Yeah, great. Yes, anybody else having any questions?